Hello and welcome to Art Talk from Phillips Mill Community Association. I'm Laura Womack. With me is the executive producer, Jen McHugh.
Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Tonight, we're talking with Annelies van Dommelen. Annelies confronts her empty medium with no plan, no vision, and no fear. The artwork that results is a record of a subconscious interior monologue that is influenced by nature, the artistic life her parents brought her up in, and the work of 16th century painter Hieronymus Bosch, among others. Annelies's works are an energetic arabesque of crows and androgynous humans set in an inchoate environment. The viewer perceives a story, but the story itself is out of reach. Hers is a fantastical realm that is nevertheless familiar somehow. The muses speak to Annelies's subconscious, and she gives them free rein on her canvas. Classically trained at Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art and other colleges, Annelies van Dommelen's work is in the collections of Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art, Hunterdon Museum of Art, and numerous corporate collections. She's exhibited at Woodmere Museum, numerous times at Phillips Mill Community Association, including in the 75th anniversary retrospective and the New Jersey State Museum. A very warm welcome to Art Talk, Annelies van Dommelen.
Hello.
And thanks to all of you in the audience for coming. Join the conversation, as you will put your questions in the Q&A so we can find them. And as always, we will give them a priority. We'll get to them and we will put them in the context of the conversation we're having. So let's get started right away looking at some of Annelies's works. You've got to see them. I'm sure many of you have, but there's so much to look at. Can we see the first slide? Thank you very much. There we go. Okay, Annelies, your work, as we mentioned, is influenced by nature. Tell us about this picture.
Well, I was swimming in a friend's pool and saving insects as I was drifting around. And this grasshopper, I got out of the pool twice, and then he jumped in again, and then I got him out again, and then he jumped in again, but I couldn't find him. Turned out he was on my sun hat. So I got him out of the pool for the third time, and I got inspired by, well, he inspired me because he was just very tiny, but very beautiful to look at, you know, especially since I was lower than he was. He was on the pool edge, so I could sort of study him pretty well. But he kind of inspired a series of paintings that I think might become a book at some point. I've had that idea before, which never seems to go beyond the paintings for the books, but there you go. So this is a fairly recent one. This summer, this was painted. It's started with jelly print, and then collagraph print, and then a lot of painting on top with acrylic.
And this isn't literal. He's not still swimming in the pool. What is the context that you're presenting him in?
It's an imaginary context, you know. It's sort of a what he's looking at actually has a little gold leaf in it, so there is a prize for him, or something for him to eat, or whatever I just placed on that shelf for him or her. But you know, it's kind of like having this experience with nature in pools, which I've had quite a bit of in my past life. So to me, it's always interesting, like when a wasp is down and you get the pool noodle or whatever, and you, as soon as you get them onto something stable, they take off, you know. And I'm always amazed by that quick reaction. I don't know why I'm amazed by it, but it fascinates me. So
all right, lovely. Let's take a look
my
at the
little
next
world.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. It is the liminal world. That's a great description of it, sort of on the edge. Okay.
This was done during my COVID experience, which was actually a pretty positive one for me because my 3 jobs that I had turned into just studio time for obvious reasons. And I did quite a few of these with the Venetian plaster surrounds. Many of them I've sold already, which is good. Um, it was 3 collagraph prints, and the figures are drawn within the small squares. And then it's mounted on board, and the background or the side ground, the surround ground, I guess, is all Venetian plaster and paint as well. I still
And so
have
when
this
you,
piece.
yeah, so when you sat down, what was in your mind when you started on this piece? There's a lot going on here.
I don't know. I really don't know what's on my mind sometimes. I'm mostly involved with, making it look good and compositionally. And some of the things that happened during it uh, were surprises to me. And then I recognized them and kept them or elaborated on them, which is just the way I work, basically. And then there's a bit of drawing in this too. The figures are all drawn in pencil in these small areas. It's called 3 humans, I guess, or 3 beings. And one is diving off a board, one is sitting, and one is balancing on a rock. I don't know why. That's just what they're doing. So I don't really get too involved predicting what the story is. I'm more involved with the outcome or what I feel at the moment, I guess. So I love this painting. I think it's a really quite involved medium-sized painting.
It is quite involved. And so that makes me think of, you'd mentioned in our conversations earlier, a fondness for Hieronymus Bosch. He also is famous for sort of complex paintings with, humans in various stages, a lot going on in his paintings. Would you say this is a painting that is influenced by him?
Well, I was listening to an interview by Philip yesterday, who, I've always kind of liked his work, but I'll tell you, I liked his words a lot more, and they relate to me. He says, when you're painting, and I'm not quoting him directly, but this is the gist of it. When you are painting, all of the influences that you've had within and the artists that you've learned from come into your painting. And then one by one, they leave. And then finally, you're left with yourself. And hopefully that one you leave too. And I thought that's brilliant, because that's when you're fully immersed in something. You're not really conscious of yourself. You're only really conscious of the work that's you're working on. So I love that quote. I've heard it before, but hearing it again just resonated with me.
It's a great quote. And I think it's also maybe not just an individual sitting, but sort of over the course of a life of work, that you are very conscious, maybe very self-conscious of your work when you begin. And as you go through and become more confident and more comfortable with who you are as an artist, I think it becomes much more of a subconscious process, I think. What do you think, Annelies?
Well, it's subconscious, but it's also conscious, because you know how to construct the painting, and you think about, composition and balance. And balance to me is key. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a Libra. I don't know if that means anything or not, but when I look at other people's work, sometimes if I can't see a balance in it, focal points or direction of where the painting is actually taking me, then I'm not as fond of the painting. I like to be led into the painting, and hopefully, that's the first thing, is to have your audience being led into the painting, and then seeing the painting as a whole from a distance. But there has to be something that brings you into the painting, something of interest. And it's the same thing for the painter. You have to create your own interest in your own work.
All right. Very good. Jen, we have a question. Let's take them as we go along as much as possible. And anyone else who has questions, please put them in the Q&A.
Sure. We have a question from Mavis Smith.
Hmm.
Mavis wants to know, what is the size of the overall painting?
That painting is approximately 15 by 18, I would say. So
All right.
it's a medium painting, small to medium painting.
All right. Very good. Do we, maybe we have a follow-up?
Yes, we do. Mavis says, I am fascinated by your free approach to start a painting.
Well, Mavis and I shared a studio many, many years ago, and she's also quite an amazing painter. She works in a different medium, which I actually got to try out with her in her studio, egg tempera, but she's an expert at that. And I'm more impatient with that medium. So
Very good. All right, so we are going to move on to the next slide. And while we do that, I'm going to ask you, Annelies, if it's possible, maybe you can tilt your camera slightly down. We've got the top of your head, and we'd love to see your full face.
oh, I don't see myself right at this moment. So
You
I just see my painting.
All right.
So,
Well, we can talk about your painting.
okay. I have well, this is a huge painting. I did this when I was at the studio that I rented for 17 years. A big studio across the street from me, which was on the top of Old English Pine, then Old English Pine. And it's an oil painting on linen. And yeah, I guess it's about 6 feet by 4 feet plus, I guess. It took a long time because it's oil, and I work in glazing. Whether I work in watercolor, oil, acrylic, any medium, I usually work in a build-up type of glazing thing. So, you know, as you work in oil, you have to sort of wait for layers to dry. So that's why I work on many other pieces. It's called anthology, and I guess it's me. Most of my paintings are me. I wish I had that body now, but I don't. But anyway, I don't. I paint the body I wish I had, I think. But it's sort of a story of my life in a way, I guess. Because you put symbols into a painting that mean things to you, and certain brushstrokes that you sort of use all your whole life, really. You know, you use the same marks. Interested in the torch. Like if I revisit that painting, I think I might make that torch that she's holding or he's holding or whoever's holding into have a little more fire in it. But like I said, it's a bit older painting, stored away. I'd like to see it again one of these days.
So
what are some of the symbols here, Annelies, if you care to share them with us?
Well, there's a bird. There's some floral aspects to it, nature aspects to it, a torch, a figure to the far right with her hand on another figure or his hand on another figure. I kind of work sort of androgynously, so even though this one appeals more female. So those are some of the symbols. There's always a lot of spheres in my work, and circles. Down towards the bottom is a supporting apparatus, which is probably some sort of a ledge and balance, and a crack in the earth that the bloom is coming out of. I don't know what it all means sometimes. It's just it's a feeling when you paint. I just paint and go with whatever is coming along, I guess. You know, it's hard to really explain my work, so even to myself.
I think that's in a way what, I mean, other than the visual quality of it, which is fascinating and engrossing, but I think it's fascinating that it is so much part of the subconscious, and that's part of its appeal, but it's also, it makes me anyway want to know more.
Yeah, that's good. And maybe you can think up a story yourself, because I'm all out of them. I don't really, well, it was painted a long time ago too, so I don't kind of remember all the story, that all the feeling, all the emotion I had with it, or the stories that I was trying to tell, so.
Is there a story in your mind when you're doing it that comes and goes? Maybe the act of the painting and expressing it on canvas or whatever medium is cathartic and it goes away then? Or is it a completely subconscious experience for you when you paint it?
Well, like I said, it's a mixture of a subconscious, but there is a consciousness to it. What I was concerned mostly about was getting that hand right, getting the body right, in my way, some directional apparatuses to bring you into the painting, like I said, or the public into the painting, the growth and the tearing of the earth down below. I mean, I'm not really, it's just a feeling. I can't really explain what the feeling is I have when I paint so much. It's just, I just get excited about doing it.
Fair enough. So there's both the technical and also the story that's happening at the same time. Let's take a couple of questions.
Sure. We have John Augustine asked, such amazing fine detail. How do you accomplish this? What are your tools?
Oh, well, I work with sable brushes mostly, and small brushes, even on a large painting. I'm very rarely use larger brushes to do anything. I don't know. I feel like every stroke I make is very direct and important in some way to the whole. And because I'm a glazer, I use a very soft brush because I don't really like brush strokes that much. I like texture, but the texture is built up with paint.
All right, good. And we have another question, Jen.
Yep. Mavis asked, so you are guided by the moment? Question mark.
Yeah, absolutely. My many moments in a painting like this, because there's always I usually start out with large swatches of oil. And my process is pretty much an overall wash of oil and drips and accidents and things that appeal to me. And then what I do mostly in all my work is I edit, which is a complex in itself procedure, because sometimes there's a great little drip over in the corner, but it doesn't go well with the overall composition. So it can be very painful to remove that in order to make the painting more cohesive. So that's my battle sometimes, is what to keep in and what to edit out.
Very good. Let's take the next slide, Jen. This one is your Phillips Mill Honored Artist painting. I don't have that year off the top of my head.
It was a couple of years ago, the year before COVID, I think, whatever year that was.
2019. 2019. Seems so long ago.
Yeah.
Tell us about it, Annelies.
Oh, well, this started out with a collograph that I built, which is a just putting down textures and mediums and cutout shapes, and added relief and embossing to a plate, which is usually a piece of mat board or bookbinding board I use on because it's a little sturdier. And then I make a blind print on, this was on watercolor paper, 300-pound arches. So a blind print is basically an embossing And then when I have the embossed watercolor, I then worked on this one in watercolor. And then after it was a watercolor, I treated it with cold wax medium and proceeded in oils on top of that. So it has a bit of, so the whole thing eventually becomes cold wax over, over watercolor with oil paint. That's the medium or combination of mediums. But there's only so much you can do in watercolor. So to take things further, I'll either use acrylic or oil.
So there's a complexity in your subject matter, but also in the media that you use. I mean, you put a lot of different materials into your work.
Yeah. So building the collagraph plate is a big ordeal in itself. And then printing it and then or embossing it is another step. And then the watercolor is another step. And then the oil painting to refine it is the last step. And then the cold wax gives it a nice finish and the ability to preserve it without glass, basically. Talking about getting rid of the framing. Cold wax has become a nice last satiny sort of finish on or any kind of painting, basically.
All right, good. So I'm going to pick up the pace. We want to see a lot of your work, Annelies, and I'm enjoying your descriptions of each one. But I know people want to see a lot of the work. The cicada, I'm interested that you paint a lot of nature, but you don't do landscapes. Here we are in Bucks County, famous for its Bucks County landscapes. You're not a landscape artist, but you're very interested in nature.
I grew up in nature and it doesn't form my work because it's so exquisite and surprising. This is the same week as the grasshopper painting, part of the supposed book that may happen at some point. And this has quite a few different approaches to it as well. It has a little collage in it, has some painting on a relief painting on tissue that I collaged on, an acrylic painting, and the collograph is an older collograph that I had with this cicada, which was also printed on a jelly plate, which is a gelatin plate, which takes an image beautifully, but it's not the be all and the end all. So there's a lot of painting that goes on afterwards.
Okay, next slide, please, Jen.
Oh, this is I really like this piece. This is part of the COVID period as well, where I did some, printmaking combined with acrylic and Venetian plaster as well. Also, a lot of texture on the upper part. That came with modeling compounds to create some textures. And yeah, I don't know what else. I guess that's it.
So you have told me that you are interested in nature, but you don't like the cute. I'm assuming you're not a Beatrix Potter fan. We see a little more of a, yeah, please go ahead.
I think Beatrix Potter is fine. I actually like Beatrix Potter, but she's not exactly what I term as cute. She's a little beyond that. So I do like her, but I don't even know where to draw the line between cute and serious, but I do like a little bit more of a mystery, I guess, in my renderings of nature.
Right, and we see that here, absolutely. Jen, next slide, please. This is lovely. You have an interest in the corvid birds.
Yeah, I just like the turn of the beak and the shape of the bird, basically. I watched a video on crows and ravens and how they use tools. This is called, I changed the name to tool user or something like that because, well, corvid for one thing is too close to COVID. So now I'm calling them rooks because it's just sounds better. This is actually one of my favorite paintings. This has a lot of printmaking, pre-printmaking with oil before the add-on of oil painting. So once again, it's done on paper. Some things are pre-printed, like the medallion in the upper left-hand corner, and that strange shape on the right, and also the corvid itself. See, there's the problem, corvid itself, right? The rook itself is a plate cut out of polypropylene, and then it's scratched into like an intaglio and printed on the same piece of paper. It all runs through the press, the printmaking items, and then afterwards it's painted on with oils.
And you have the interest in crows, in rooks, goes back to perhaps a childhood experience, Annelies?
Well, I mean, people ask me that, and I guess everything everything influences you in your life. I saved a crow's life when I was about 12 and watched its wing get set at the veterinarian's office and saw its progression back into being let free. So that was a big influence. And I lived in the park where the nature center was. So that's where the crow kept, resuscitated itself until it was able to fly again. So I feel, like that was a good experience. And of course, crows when you're young, when you're that small, are very big and have very dark eyes. So I had to carry that crow with me for about a quarter of a mile to get to the nature center. And it was just a really good experience of the whole thing, the sort of the conversation you have with this animal that's in your hands, trying not to get beaked, I guess, or pecked at or whatever.
Very good. Jen, let's take the question in the Q&A, and if anyone else has questions, please put them in the Q&A for us.
Sure. Mavis wants to know, how do you prepare the paper to receive oil?
That's what I use, the cold wax. I either use a transparent gesso to protect the paper, or I use, after all the printmaking is done, could use a cold wax medium over top, and then use paint on top of that and sort of hope for the best. And because they're mounted on board, I'm hoping that they're mounted on an archival board. So I'm hoping that the process of mounting it will hold the whole thing together over time. I'm pretty archivally concerned, so I try to, keep things so they will last. But you never know, with oil and paper, sometimes they can have problems later on in life. But I think I take enough precaution to, keep them good.
Okay, let's look at another slide.
This is a fairly new one. It's a combination of jelly prints and collage, a bit of collage, and also a lot of acrylic painting done on a very absorbent paper, which was given to me years ago. I have a stack of it, and I'm using it. I used a lot of it in the last couple of years. And the beauty of the paper is that it's so absorbent that you can, as you put down the layers, you can go from a very translucent wash to a more opaque, you build up to a more opaque substance. But the nice thing of the paper is the absorption of of your medium and how you can build it up. You're kind of glazing without your glazing, without your thinking about glazing. You can build it up without, because all the acrylic that you put down creates a barrier for the next, creates a base for the next layer. So it's been fun to work on because of that.
Jen, let's get to some of those questions in the Q&A.
Yes, we have someone that wants to know, what is a jelly print?
Oh, a jelly print is it's a very popular printmaking medium lately because it's a very quick medium. You work it with acrylic paints. It's a gelatin plate that you can buy or you can make, but I don't bother making them. You can buy them. They're readily available in different sizes. You roll on the ink, and then you can use stencils to create different levels on the jelly plate, and you can do transfers on them. And it's kind of hard to, they're easy to do, but they're hard to explain. But during my recent illness, I watched a lot of YouTubes on it, and some of them were very pedestrian, but there are a few that every YouTube I watched, I got one good tip from. I probably watched about 50 of them. So there was always something they could get from each one, another tip. I'm very big on process, so I love watching process. And even if I know how to do something, I'll still watch the process because there's always something in there that you can learn from, from even someone who's pretty amateurish about the whole thing, I guess. But it's a great, kids can play with it, and you can carry it to another level, basically, or many levels up, really.
So that's a tip I learned from you. I can't get through a lot of the instructional how-tos on YouTube, but that's inspiring. Okay, Jen, and we have another question for Annelies.
Yes, thank you, Jim, for asking this because I was wondering the same thing. Jim said he was just amazed at how many levels of painting. And how do you start with printmaking before painting? Wow.
We all feel that
Well,
way.
Exactly.
Basically, I have to work from suggestion. I'm not really a person that says I'm going to paint an apple and then or paint something. I'm going to paint a particular, I don't have a particular idea in my head. So I work from suggestions. So printmaking a lot of times can give you that element of suggesting something to work upon. And so I sort of, especially with the jelly plates and with monotypes, because they're very painterly. And when you pull the print off, some things are missing. You can add on to them in the printmaking process, and then you can actually paint later into them, which is, I rarely stop with the printmaking process of monotypes. I usually always go into painting, whether it's acrylic or oil. But it's something within the printmaking process which allows me to pick up on a suggestion, which then becomes more. So I don't know how to explain it, but I guess I have to work from a splotch of paint or an energy of paint, or just a cacophony of shapes and motions in order for me to get an idea of where to go next. It's just the way I painted. And I've tried to paint like, the Bucks County landscape, or especially when I was younger, when I wasn't having enough financial success, I would try to paint because I'm classically trained. I know how to do these things pretty much, but I would try to paint something, more realistic, but it always ended up being more than that, and almost into the realm of unsaleability a lot of times, because you have to be careful. People don't like scary paintings, which I've heard a lot. Some of my paintings was very scary in the beginning, so but I have to enjoy myself, and I have to intrigue myself. So I could never stop at, just a particular image. I had to take it further. So I just follow whatever it is that tells me to do that. So.
And I think, yes, there we go. Thank you very much, Jen. Fenna in Holland, Annelies.
Once again, another series of paintings that sort of stopped along the way. This is my mother and her dog. When she was younger, she was quite a stylish Dutch woman. And these are from old photographs, which are black and white, but I did a series of what I called Never Fades. I still have most of them. Some of them are finished because at one point it was getting a little sad to paint my deceased mother and father, so I sort of stopped, but I may revisit it again. You never know, but I do have them. I did sell one, and but I'm holding the rest. So I have about 10 of them, I guess, in that series. Me in a pool, my first pool, and me as a very strong 4-year-old, and me in a Dutch costume, which, I wore to class one day, and, things like that, my history. So the Never Fade came from the type of Kodak paper that it was printed on, with the ruffled edges and stuff. It's called Never Fade. So I thought that was a great title for the series. And that's my mother's middle name. Oh, there's me in the pool in Olden Avenue in Trenton, where I was born. And man, I look really strong in those paintings, I'll tell you.
Youth will do that for you. Annelies, I think it's so fascinating to look at an artist's early work because it's often so completely different. This is there's a big journey in between these paintings, which are marvelous.
Well, these actually aren't early works, though.
Not early.
They're,
okay, interesting.
Yeah.
That's even in some ways more interesting. This is such a different style from what we've been looking at.
Yeah, it was just something I wanted to do, so I did them, but it wasn't that early. But maybe, I've been doing this for 45 years, I guess, something like that. And this was maybe 20 years ago I did this series.
So you have had some health challenges recently, Annelies. We don't need to go into that, but has it changed what you're painting?
I don't think it's changed so much what I'm painting, but I think what it does, it takes away. The first time I had cancer, which was 30 years ago, it took away fear of painting because, there's nothing scarier than cancer. So all of a sudden, I remember when I was going through treatment, chemo and radiation, then I had a whole stack of watercolors that were never finished, and I could just knock them out, one by one. There was just very big clarity of what to do on them in my bedroom. So there is an element of being fearless that comes along with it, I guess, So like with any life challenge anybody has, really, as long as you let it come, But it's also been my solace and my luckiness to be an artist when I've had these challenges already, because I can't imagine sometimes having to go through the already trying time of learning how to paint, which is trying. You have to have a lot of confidence to paint, and the only way you get the confidence to paint is by painting and gaining the confidence. And it's not about inspiration, it's about just doing it, practicing, and enjoying the process of it, basically. When people say they aren't inspired, it's, there is very little inspiration. It's all about getting into the studio and doing it and enjoying what you're doing. If you're not enjoying it, then you might as well get a job that pays you more money, for one thing. But the intensity of being an artist and the brain power and the emotions and the skill and everything involved takes a long time with any art, so, but you have to enjoy what you're doing, you have to be intrigued by it. You have to, which is why I paint in lots of different mediums also, and because I get bored. Like I just made 100 of those little pins and now I'm bored. I'm ready to move on to something else, but they were fun, but it's over. Now I got to put all the pin backs on them. So send some young kid over to do that for me.
But Anna, that is, I think, one of the fascinating aspects of your career is that, there are many artists who find a niche, find something that's successful, and they stay with that because they get good feedback, maybe good sales. But you are a restless artist and you move on. And I think that is a blessing and a curse, if you don't mind my saying.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough thing to deal with when I was younger because, I had to have 2 other jobs to support myself. And there were varied jobs over my lifetime. I was a cartographer, a bartender, cocktail waitress, a framer, a Girl Friday. I mean, I did a lot of different things. House painting, which is my last job, and but I did a lot of other things. I had this saying that I would say, and I don't mean this negatively to anybody who does landscapes, but I would say I paint houses so I don't have to paint landscapes, because that was not my calling. But I knew that living in Bucks County, if I did paint landscapes, I'd probably have a better occupation. But so, I made that choice, and I did enjoy painting houses, and I was damn good at it. So, and it was a good physical job, and I loved my clients, and I loved my crew, and it made enough money that I had my own business, so I could schedule a whole house and then take off 3 weeks and then schedule another one. So I was in control of my life. I think that's the main thing for an artist, to be in control of their life and have enough freedom to be able to do what they need to do. So, but this is my job now. So this is what I'm doing every day, which is great. I finally got to the point where I can do it every day, and my sales are getting better, and I don't know, it's working.
That's exciting.
I'll never be rich, but it's working.
Few of us will. We've got a comment, a question, Jen.
Yes, this is from John. He goes back to the paintings of your families, and he said, love your idea of painting your history.
Yeah, I loved it too. It was fun when I did it, for sure. I'm having an urge to paint large again. I've been living in a smaller world lately, just due to, well, one, storage. That's a huge problem for me. And any artist probably. I'd love to do some sculpture, but I have no place to put it. I'd love to paint some larger paintings, but I don't have the energy just yet. But also, I don't have any place to put them. Storage is huge, and I have a fairly large studio, but it's hard to store that much work. So my thing for the last 4 years, well, the last 3 years definitely, has been, do a painting, throw it in a drawer, do a painting, throw it in the flat file, do a painting, throw it in the drawer. So if you went through my flat files, there's just hundreds of paintings in there, but mostly on a smaller scale, and some finished, some unfinished. But I'll pick through the drawer once in a while, and something will, one of the paintings will grab me and tell me that it needs more work, and then I'll start working on it, and I'll resolve it, and then I'll either frame it or throw it back in the drawer. It's like I have so much work that nobody's ever seen, basically, like that large anthology painting. I don't think that's ever been out in public, so it's just stored.
We're going to have to do that studio tour when the circumstances are better, Annelies, but we'll take We've got a little more time. Let's take a look at a few more paintings if we can fit them in. Now, this is, I used to wear dresses.
Yeah.
Um,
This is right after the the breast cancer diagnosis. This is the first large painting I did after that. And I think this pretty much relates to my life at that time in a pretty obscure way, I guess. But that figure on the left is definitely me. And there were saws happening in the building that I was in. They were cutting wood or something. And that to me seemed like a circular saw. It's a little ominous, the painting, but you know, that's where I was at that time. And it's also fairly dark because I didn't have good lighting in that studio, but I had space, lots of it, which was great. So I was grateful for that. And I was there for 17 years. No one even knew where I was. I never had visitors or anything. So this is part of the series with the Venetian plaster and the 3 jelly prints. The middle print in this has a linoleum print in it as well, printed on this paper that printed on the jelly plate and then pulled off with acrylic, and then a lot of painting goes on afterwards.
All right.
Good.
Well, I want to share a lot of your work, Annelies. I think there's so much to see, and I hope people do go to your open studio. It's absolutely worthwhile. This is lovely.
A linoleum print. Yeah, I did this during the COVID experience too. There was carving into a linoleum block seemed to be very cathartic at that time. Removing something bit by bit, and yeah, I love this print. It came out good. Came out very well. I did maybe 4 or 5 linoleum prints at that time as well, between this and the painting. So.
And next slide, please, Jen.
This is I picked up these gaskets at a yard sale, and gaskets for, I don't know what, an automobile or a furnace or something, 2 of them. And they were rusty. So I did a rust print first. And the holes are actually, the gaskets created the embossment for the circular areas. And I did quite a few of these where I ran the rusty gaskets, which are very thin, through my press, picked up all the rust, and then the watercolor was done around that.
Jen, let's have Storm, please. Oh, here we go. Site 1. There we go.
Oh. I did this at the Academy. I love doing lithographs. Very, very involved procedure to make lithographs, stone on the stone. You have to levigate the stone, and then it has to be perfectly flat, and with calipers you have to adjust it, and then you can draw on it with wax mediums and touches and a lot of washes, and then you can scrape into it. Then you have to etch it with acid and let it sit, and then the printing of it is you need help printing it, and the stones are very heavy. So I did this while I was at the Academy. I did all my lithos there. And then this was black and white. But once again, I had maybe 15 of these prints in black and white. And I just took one of them and turned it into an oil painting.
This is
and
amazing.
This was kind of a tumultuous time in my life. My mother had just passed away. So that's why it's called Storm.
All right, I think we've got one more. There we go.
And this is a stone litho as well. I did this with a dedication to a sculptor friend of mine who had allowed me to come into his studio, Jim Calavita, and work in his studio in ceramics and clay. And when he passed away, and he was quite an amazing artist and sculptor, and he had a small farmette That's where all the animals come from. So I did maybe 25 of these, and I gave 15 away to his best friends as a tribute, I guess, to his life.
Annelies, we've got a few comments and questions.
Okay.
We're going to take those. Yep, Jen's got the complicated
Sorry,
job.
I had to unmute myself. There are several comments. I am so impressed by how varied your work is, your different media, etc. Love this session. Mavis Smith said, thank you so much for your brave honesty here. Jim Feld, again, amazing how many mediums you are working in, blows my mind. And then we do have a question. When is the open studio?
The Open Studio is Thanksgiving weekend. It's part of the Covered Bridge Artisans Tour. And you can go to their website, which is just that, Covered Bridge Artisans. And there's many people on the tour. Some of us are out of the studio, so you can go visit each studio. It's a nice thing to do with your family, and it's Black Friday and Saturday and Sunday.
Well, that's terrific. And I would like to, Jen, do we have more or is that it?
Well, she did want to know, glad to see you here, love your work. What are your future plans? New media, shows?
I have a show at James Dupree's Gallery in December with Stacy Spears Scott, a good friend of mine and a fabulous artist. And we've shown together quite a bit together because we seem to go well together, even though we do vastly different types of work. And then I have a show at Ficus Gallery in December as well in Princeton. They just did an interview with me live in my studio, and a lot of interviews lately. I've never been interviewed so much as in the last year. I've never been interviewed, actually. So I have those, and then I have I'll be, I don't know, I can't even remember. There's a couple smaller things in town. But mostly it's the open studio that I get ready for. I also make handmade boxes. I hope I can make some this year because they're really fun. And I forgot to mention that I was a paper maker for 10 years. I did handmade paper on a large scale, pulp painting mostly. And I was with Rosenfeld Gallery, and he sold a lot of my work to corporations. And I made a decent amount of money from those. And then I had this wild desire to paint in oils, and I ruined my whole market. So, like I said, you got to go where you got to go, you know. So, and I went into the darker side. I don't know, but recently I've done some pulp painting, and I've loved it. I went to the Women's Studio Workshop, and I loved painting with paper again, paper pulp. So now I'm sort of looking for another place where I can do that because I'm not set up for that in my studio. So I love workshops. If anybody, and I've been to a lot, I've been to Penland, Haystack, Vermont Studio Center, Z Maze printmaking, many different workshops and different printmaking mediums, silk screen, and just stuff that I never would have done had I not gone to these workshops, because you need totally different equipment. And that's always invigorating to go away for a couple weeks or even a week and just be amongst other people and new techniques. It always brings something new to the table. So I love that. You know, that's a great thing to do. So that's my future plans, is to find a paper making workshop where I can go and paint with pulp again, and also just continue on the road and stay alive, you know, and healthy. So those are my plans.
Those
Oh,
are
and sell
excellent
more work.
Sell your work.
Sell some of that stuff in the drawer. You know, there's a lot of it in there. So, yeah.
Those are excellent plans, Annelies. We wish you all the best. And I think Mavis Smith said it best when she said, thank you for your bravery. Thank you for sharing.
That's awfully nice to say. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Please go to Annelies van Dommelen's open studio on Thanksgiving weekend. ArtTalk is taking a holiday in December. We'll be back with you in January. So join us then. Look on the website at phillipsmill.org for details on that. Thank you very much to Jen McHugh, our executive producer.
Thank you.
Sorry,
I hope
I
I did
cannot hit that
okay.
unmute. You did fabulous.
Oh, okay, good.
Thank
Some
you,
days I'm more
Jean.
brilliant than others. This is my less brilliant day. So
You're fabulous. Thank you to Jean Mahitch, who produced this program. Thank you to Dennis Riley, our content producer as well. And I'm Laura Womack for Phillips Mill Art Talk. Thank you all for joining us. Have a good night.